Live? Are we getting a countdown or are we just three? Okay, all right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lion Talks, episode 3. My name is John Scadeño.
And I'm Victoria Lazo Romero, and we're your host for today. So today we have Dr. Raimundo Ramos. He is the Associate Vice President for Students Affairs in the Division of Health Affairs at the University of Texas at Rio Grande Valley. He attended the University of Texas at Austin, holds a master's degree from Sam Houston State University, and a doctoral degree in higher education administration from Texas Tech University. Dr. Ramos, thank you for joining us here today at World Scholars. It is such an honor to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure.
It's our pleasure too. So, Dr. Ramos, we would like to start with some questions about your professional background if we can. So, first, I want to start off with, when did you first realize that you wanted to work in the career that you are working in now? Was it sort of a single defining moment, or was it more of a slow transition into where you are now?
It was definitely a slow transition, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
I grew up with parents who were both educators, and I swore that I would never go into education. It wasn't until I was graduating from UT Austin that I really took the time to think about what it was that I was interested in and what sort of fit my skill set. I had been, I grew up, in a lot of student organizations, and I was comfortable in talking in front of people, and I had a love for the institution, UT Austin. And so my first job was as a recruiter for UT Austin. And I came in at a time where student affairs were really sort of growing. And so it sort of fed my passion, and it just sort of led me on the journey long-term in sort of higher education.
So it was a very beneficial change of heart then from your original.
Absolutely.
Very nice. All right. So could you describe what kind of doctorate degree you have, and if you'd like, kind of share a bit of your journey and get into it?
Yeah. I sort of was non-traditional in that sense as well, in that once I left UT Austin just 3 classes shy of graduating. My parents about killed me, but I pursued a passion for a few years, and then came back and finished my degree. And at that time, I felt like I was a little behind in my career, my employment experience. And the last thing I wanted to do was to go right back to school. So it took me a while, and I didn't get my master's until later in life. And once I got my master's, I promised my late mom that I was going to, get a terminal degree, right? That I was going to go the next step. And so this higher education degree really felt great in my wheelhouse, right? Because it sort of helped me understand everything from student development theory to budgets to how institutions work, and really gave me an understanding of how I could best help support students in college, right? And so for me, it was the right thing. I already had a number of years in college in working at a university under my belt. And so it was the next logical step for me.
Wow. That's actually super interesting.
Yeah. Now, what is your favorite part of your job and why? Why did you choose to become an Associate Vice President for Students Affairs instead of any similar jobs? I mean, I know you kind of answered this question already with like what you just explained, but yeah. I guess maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah. I've had the pleasure of working at a couple of different institutions in Texas. I grew up in the Valley. I grew up in Mission, graduated from Mission High School. And so one of it was just the attraction of coming back to the Valley. All my extended family is here. It's been a long time since I've lived in the Valley, so that was a big draw for me. But as far as the job itself, this particular position allowed me to sort of create this is a new role at UTRGV, and it allowed me to sort of create it from the ground up. And it allowed me to work not only in student success, but also a little bit with admissions and a little bit with our health related programs, right? And so it was all areas of interest for me. And so there was no way that I wasn't going to apply for it. And when it was offered, there was no way I wasn't going to take it.
Definitely.
That sounds really good. I feel like this job was like perfect for you, right?
It came at the right time, right? And having the doctoral degree, having that terminal degree opened up this particular door, right? Because that was one of the requirements for this position. So if I wouldn't have gone back and finished that degree, this opportunity never would have become available to me.
That's awesome. Maybe it was like God's plan too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, our next question is, you've worked at different colleges like Texas State, University of Texas at Austin, and currently you're working at UTRGV. So what has it been like to work at all these different universities? If you're allowed to share, would you pick a favorite?
Would I pick a favorite? That's a little dangerous, right?
Yeah.
But I gotta say, you know, that I've always been a little partial to UT Austin because it was my alma mater, right? But every institution brings its own charm and brings something that I love, right? Working in San Marcos was a little different because it sort of has that small town charm. It's a different type of student. And so I love that experience for that. But coming back to UTRGV has really, it has felt like home from the get-go. Although COVID and this pandemic has made it a little challenging. I have now worked from home longer than I have actually worked in the office at UTRGV. So that has been a new experience for sure. That's all about to change as we start heading back to the office here in the next few weeks. But I love all three institutions that I've had the pleasure of working at.
That's really good news. Yeah. We knew this question was going to be a little bit iffy, but I know that like picking the universities was a good option, and like I'm sure that you like them each the same, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I mean, UT Austin is just a great school overall. I mean, it's in one of on the record, debatably like the best city in Texas.
Right. You know, they all offer different types of things, right? And different types of experiences. But I've been blessed that I've worked at three institutions that I've really loved working at. So not many people get that benefit in their lives.
Definitely. All right, so you mentioned sort of things like student affairs and student themselves overall, and you're very kind of connected with students at your job. So what would you say are some of the qualities that all the universities we've mentioned before kind of look for in students?
Yeah, and I have the benefit of, I like I said, I started in admissions at UT Austin. I also served as the director of admissions at the University of Texas School of Law I worked at UT Law for almost a decade. The thing to remember, I think, when you're applying to any school is that schools are looking for somebody that is well-rounded, that is going to come in and has demonstrated that they can perform in the classroom, but also that has the ability to come in and contribute to the fabric of the campus outside of the classroom, right? So students that can contribute both in and out of the classroom are going to be valued by any institution. And so I think that of anything, it's sort of that well-rounded nature that makes students really attractive, regardless of whatever schools you choose to apply to.
Completely agree. So you've been all over Texas, whether it be universities or hometowns. Right. And so I know you mentioned this earlier, but if you could get more of a kind of, you mentioned how your family brought you back down here, but kind of what drew you into working with UTRGV itself, or were there any sort of special opportunities outside the jobs given that kind of drew you in, or was that really it?
No, I think the beauty of, or the ability to really create this role in the way that I desired was the biggest attraction, right? Because it was new, because they had sort of a general framework of what they expected the duties to be, but then allowed me to come in and sort of shape that the way that we needed to. There is no doubt that our health affairs students at UTRGV need very specific and unique things to make them successful, whether that is clinical activities in hospitals and clinics and that sort of thing, whether it is in the classroom and those classroom experiences. And then it allowed me to also work on, when students come into health affairs, it is science heavy, it is math heavy, And so sometimes our students come in and struggle. And so we need to find ways to support them and make sure that they're successful from the day that they enter to the time that they graduate. And so having the ability to sort of form my responsibilities around that it has been the biggest, benefit for me in having taken this role at UTRGV.
Mm-hmm. So just the fact that you get to kind of interact and very much benefit and help students more so than anything else is kind of what helps make this job kind of fun.
Absolutely.
That's very admirable.
Mm-hmm. Now, since like John mentioned that you've traveled like because of like the universities, because of your family, and considering how large Texas is, have you noticed any cultural differences between the universities you worked at? What cultural characteristics stand out to you about UTRGV itself or RG?
There are definite differences in the institutions that I worked, right? UT, it's massive, 50,000 plus students from a wide variety of different countries and states and nationalities and cultures, right? But because it is so large, you never get or feel like you have the opportunity to experience all of that. You hit pockets of it, right?
Yeah.
I will never forget having started at Texas State. It is a minority serving institution, right? So it is majority minority students. And I will never forget walking on campus the first couple of weeks and hearing students on their phones speaking in Spanish. I didn't hear a lot of that at Texas. I didn't see that in the pockets, right?
Yeah.
Because the Latino numbers weren't as strong, right? At Texas State, I felt it it was a little more felt, a little more present.
Yeah.
Now at UTRGV, right, it feels like home. It feels like, the students that you're surrounded by, because many of these students have grown up in the Valley, right? They've lived your experiences for the most part, right? They speak your language for the most part. And so it really feels like that hominess is there. And so, again, there are benefits to all three, but there have been cultural differences in all.
So it's almost kind of like a second family made up of hundreds, if not thousands of students.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're excited to try to, get back to that, right? Because COVID and having virtual learning be the predominant modality for us has been challenging, right? Mm-hmm. So we're excited to sort of shift back to a face-to-face format as we move toward the fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So UTRGV's medical school and health-related classes are drastically growing in size and popularity, right? So do you see UTRGV becoming a popular area for non-local students to study in the future?
I do. Now, understanding there are limits to that, right? Because state law only allows 10% of our student population to be from outside the state of Texas, right? So the vast majority of our students are still going to be from the Rio Grande Valley and from the state of Texas. But I think that, we have a lot of new programs. We continue to grow. We have a new podiatry school that's going to open up in the next couple of years. We have a pharmacy school that's going to open up in the next couple of years. We have doctoral programs in nursing and in occupational therapy that are coming online very, very soon. So I think that as sort of those opportunities grow within the School of Medicine and in health affairs, that we're going to get people outside of the Valley that they're going to have their interest piqued, right? So I do think that some of those new opportunities are going to draw from other parts of the state as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So as high school students, we're actually pretty intrigued on how your career works and how your kind of life is as this kind of, sorry, I lost my track there. But we're very interested in your job. So as a holder of such a high position, you oversee plenty of students and staff, and I assume that you have a lot on your plate half the time. Can you describe sort of what an average day like is for you?
Wow. It varies, obviously, right? But I would say that it is a lot of meetings. That is my life, right? A lot of meetings, a lot of putting out fires. When student issues arise, we have a lot of different things that we're dealing with. For example, we're very unique in health affairs in that all of our students, for the most part, are required to do some hands-on training before they actually graduate, right? Unlike business or other colleges or schools at UTRGV, that is something that's required of our students. But for example, we require health insurance for our students. And there's a lot of issues that are happening behind the scenes and trying to help students figure it all out. So it's those sorts of things that we deal with on a daily basis, right? Grade issues, faculty issues, all those sorts of things. And I think that there's a lot of collaboration that happens as well. I'm in constant communication with deans, assistant deans, directors, other vice presidents, to sort of help shape the policy. That's one of the things, right, is affecting policy at sort of a more macro level. In most of my other positions, I would help implement policy that affected my particular little unit, right? This is having the ability to affect what's happening on campus generally. And so those sorts of things are going on a daily basis as well. So it's a lot of that, a lot of meetings, a lot of putting out fires, and a lot of collaborating with campus partners.
So you got a pretty jam-packed life then.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's one thing about COVID, right? And being on Zoom all the time is that we might have half an hour between meetings to allow me to walk from one part of campus to another. Now they're just going back to back to back. So I'll finish one and jump right into another. So I'm a little excited about getting back to campus too for that reason.
That actually perfectly leads into our next question. How has your job kind of been affected by the new online environment? I know you've mentioned, Zoom meetings and things like that.
Yeah.
And do you think once things go back to normal, would you kind of prefer to keep Zooms, or would you really want things to get kind of back to being more in person?
Yeah, there are things that I miss about being able to interact with colleagues in person, but I don't think that Zoom is going away. I think it's going to remain a viable part of our work experience. But yeah, I think there are some things that we miss from that face-to-face interaction for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I feel this interview would have gone not smoother, but it would have been a much more sort of maybe it's the wrong word, but intimate sort of.
Yeah, it's different, right? It's just a different type of experience, right?
Exactly.
And so yeah, we want to get back to some of that for sure.
Now, our next question is, what would you say to students who want to pursue a career similar to yours?
Don't do it. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I am kidding. It is, I've been really blessed in that a position like this is rewarding, right? In helping students achieve their, whether it's personal, whether it's academic, whether it's professional goals, it's nice at the end of the day to know that you've had or played a role in people's, in people achieving those things, right? And just the general interaction, when you're on a campus and you're face to face with students and interacting with students all the time, as you grow older, they help keep you younger, if that makes any sense. There's a liveliness and an energy to it. And I've thoroughly enjoyed working in a campus setting. It's not something that a lot of students think of right off the bat, right? As you're going through high school and college, like, oh, I want to work on a college campus. Most students don't think that, and I didn't either. But now, having been able to live this life and live my work experiences, I wouldn't change a thing. So I would highly recommend it.
That sounds very sweet, and I feel like with COVID and all, it's put a rift in between that. But I feel like your job specifically opens up a lot of interaction with students, which honestly it sounds really fun.
Yeah, there's no doubt that with COVID, we had to shift a lot of things very quickly. A lot of, for example, our students that were in hospitals and clinics and stuff, when COVID first hit, we had to shut everything down. Our students were not allowed to train there. So we had to, in 2 weeks, we had to shift our online to an online curriculum and then meet the standards for accreditation, right? It's like, okay, well, you can do these things virtually. So we had to really, really jump to make these things happen. So we've learned a lot, I think, through these processes as well.
Definitely.
Okay, our next question is, what skills do you think are the most important for those entering the College of Health Professions itself? Teamwork, personal determination, anything like that? Are there any classes or programs you recommend a high school student to complete as of now in order for them to have a better chance of admission?
I think that the reality is in going back to what I referenced about being a well-rounded student, right? You want to make sure that the classes that you are registered for in high school, that you take in high school, you do well in. You do as well as you possibly can, right? I think that's the first thing, right? Because you're demonstrating to your institutions, your prospective institutions, that you can cut it, right? That you can succeed with the rigor of their curriculum, right? So I think that that's important. I do think that if you are going into a STEM field, if it's going to be heavy science and math, obviously you need to have that background. You need to be able to do that.
Yeah.
If you're a strong writer, I think that helps. I will never forget getting my first paper back when I was at UT and it just covered in red. I was like, okay, well, I thought I was a pretty good writer, right? And now you're learning that you kind of weren't.
Yeah.
So I think that's always important. And being sort of like a researcher, making sure that you can research whatever it is that you need, whether it's in the classroom, outside of that, you're sort of taking ownership of things. I think if you can do that, I think you'll be better off in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that'll really help in the career later on, just making sure that like you're keeping track of everything for like all your classes, but specifically like just in general, more like interactions, since this job specifically is for, it's more about like health professions, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that often students forget, sometimes that if you're, whatever field you're going to go into, you need to make sure that you're academically prepared for the challenge.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that's part of the downfall for students that aren't successful in college right off the bat, is they fail to see that right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. So taking a break from students themselves and kind of looking at bigger picture here.
Sure.
With your knowledge in the sort of field of health professions, what would you say are some of the most in-demand jobs in the field right now?
Man, you take your pick, right? I read a recent article from a Valley paper a couple of months back that said that 43% of all jobs in the Valley that have been created within the last decade are health related.
Wow.
Oh, really?
It is doctor, nurse, physician assistant, chiropractor. I was in a chiropractor's office this morning and they had on their bulletin board, right, the fact that we need more chiropractors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that regardless of what it is, whether it's clinical lab sciences or rehab counseling, or social work, I think there is a need for all of those things in the Valley and beyond. So I just think that the way the population is growing older, health-related fields are going to continue to grow. So I don't think you can go wrong in a health-related profession moving forward.
Definitely. So going back to students, over the span of your career, you've worked with plenty of students. What would you say is one thing you wish they'd maybe changed about themselves, something that's maybe undesirable to colleges or, hospitals, jobs, things like that?
I don't know that it's necessarily anything that I would change, but I think that there are two things that I see that students might be lacking coming in to any institution, right? Mm-hmm. That is self-reflection.
Yeah.
And I'll just briefly give you my experience. I started business when I was first at UT Austin, not really for any particular reason, and other than my parents said, hey, that might be a good thing to go into, and they had a strong program, and I was like, business it is, right? I didn't do a whole lot of research. And I didn't stop to think as an incoming freshman that I was going to have to take, all of these math classes and accounting classes and all those sorts of things. And I really didn't like math, right? So I knew I was going to have to work harder at it. And I think that is a failure for a lot of our students going in. And so having some self-awareness and understanding what you're strong at and what you're not strong at and where your passions lie and how all that's going to fit, I think is important for all of our students. And then again, the other thing I think would be being proactive. Is a lot of students go into their college journeys and sort of let people talk at them, or they sort of don't take charge of their academic journey, right? And I think we need more of our students to really take full on, right, their journeys and what that means, and being responsible for it, from the first day they are on campus until they graduate. I think those are two things that are lacking in most students attending college.
Yeah, I would say so too. And actually going back to students as well, would you like to share a story about how, if you've ever worked with a student that has impacted you to this day?
There's a lot of students that have impacted
Yeah.
me to this day, but I can pull one example for sure. There's a student by the name of Rudy Mateer that I met when I was first in admissions at UT Austin. African American kid whose parents had come from Nigeria. Always was involved on campus in student organizations and worked with us in admissions. Was a pretty good student. I lost track of him for a while, and then when I went to the law school, he was a law student, so I got to work with him there as well.
Oh, really?
Living in a little town outside of Austin for the last 5 to 10 years, he became my city councilman.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So I've been able to track him from when he was 18 all the way now through his sort of public service career as well. So I've had the ability to see him grow up, right, and become an attorney and become, a public servant, and it's been really great to see. So he continues to amaze me and inspire me to continue doing what I'm doing.
That's so awesome. Literally, I wish I could meet him.
That's
a good
one
kid.
journey.
I bet you anything, if you found him online and reached out to him, I'm sure he would follow up for sure.
Sounds good. All right, so we're going to finish off with this last question here, and we've asked it before on Line Talks to our viewers who've tuned in before, but we like to get a sort of different perspective on it for each guest we have. What would you say to local students who may not want to go to UTRGV because of how close it is?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I think that the important thing is not to discount it, right? I sort of did the same thing growing up. There is some value in going away to college, but there is a lot of value in going to a local university that has a wealth of opportunities for a lot lesser of a price tag, right? I didn't really think at the time about debt and that sort of thing when I was first going to college. And so I think that UTRGV is a great value when it comes to that. But I think that there is a renewed interest in growing the institution and in the programs that are being offered.
Mhm.
And so I think that you have everything that you need in your backyard. So I would just say, don't discount it. It is a viable option that I think is of great value to many of our students.
Yeah, there's no disgrace staying. There's no disgrace staying close to home.
No, absolutely not.
Sure.
Absolutely not.
Now, Doctor, we're almost running out of time here, so
Sure.
thank you so much for sharing all your information and spending your time with us. So we actually have this game established here at Lion Talks. It's kind of become like a tradition almost. So it's like the first word that comes to mind game. So we're gonna give you a few words, and you're gonna say the words that pop in your head, and that would be your answer. So are you ready?
Okay.
All right. First word is UTRGV.
Home.
Okay.
The second word is health.
Second word is what?
Health.
Health.
Yes.
Yes.
Important.
Mm-hmm. Texas.
Greatest.
Lions.
Go Lions.
I can work with that. And you, Dr. Ray Ramos.
For me,
Yes, sir.
servant.
Okay. Awesome.
So we'd like to thank you one last time for joining us. We've really appreciated having you here, and we hope possibly maybe later on we can see you again soon.
Would love to. Thank you guys for your time. Really appreciate it. Best of luck
Thank
to
you
you.
so much,
We've had an amazing
doctor.
time.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
All right.
Bye. See you soon.
Bye, sir. Have a good one. All right. And to everyone else watching on the YouTube Live or Facebook, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Make sure to tune in next week. We will have another guest coming up. And if you have any comments, concerns, make sure to send them to social.worldscholars@stisd.net. I'm John Escadeño.
I'm Victoria Lazo Romero.
Good evening.
Go Lions. Thank you.